Yeah, sure. There's not going to be people coming to those. There you go. I agree. All right.
We're going to get started. We'll reward all of you for being on time. Hi, everybody. We're here to talk about PACTS. And hopefully the goal is to tell you a little bit about PACTS for those who don't know, and give you some experience of one of the aspects of the curriculum, which is a case exploration that we do with typically the trainees. But hopefully this is something that will give you good experience and insight into the curriculum and maybe take back to your programs. We're going to tag team this over the next, so the four of us listed there will all talk a little bit. I'm Doug Smink. I'm the Vice Chair of Education at the Brigham in the Department of Surgery. This was an NIH grant, actually, to create and then study this curriculum. Today, we're going to hope to introduce the concept of cultural dexterity to you and how it works in surgical care. Help you understand the curriculum a little bit, and then provide you with some tools to go home and teach this and then assess learners on cultural dexterity. So PACTS, what is PACTS? So it's called the Provider Awareness and Cultural Dexterity Toolkit for Surgeons. Okay, so it's a curriculum that we created with the goal of improving outcomes and disparities. So really a lot of disparities work focuses on systems or institutions. This was focused on the provider and hopes that we could, through this curriculum, teach skills for situation awareness and being adaptable in various cultural and patient encounters, and then use that to improve patient care. So ultimately, we developed this curriculum that has 4 components: relationship and trust building, communicating with patients with limited English proficiency, the informed consent process, and management of pain. And we're going to ultimately, at the end, focus on trust building. So the trial itself was not only to develop the curriculum, but then to study it. And we did this at 8 institutions. I'll share those with you in a sec, and see its impact on knowledge, skills, and beliefs in cross-cultural care. I mentioned those 4 modules. The intervention of the trial is this educational curriculum. We tried to build good modern education science into the trial. So we had a flipped classroom model. There are e-learning modules that are part of the curriculum. Then these interactive case explorations rather than lectures. And then spaced education, multiple choice questions to reinforce concepts after the different in-person case explorations, or ultimately, part of the time it was virtual. Here are the sites. So this group of institutions and their program directors and education leaders actually worked for 4 years developing and studying the curriculum. And I'm not going to go into the science behind it, but it was a randomized crossover design. We had 4 residencies that were in the early group, 4 in the delayed group. The early group got the intervention, that's PACTS, you can see there. The delayed group got it in the second time period. And we did a lot of testing along the way. And I'm not going to go into all that testing, but it included multiple choice questions. It included OSCEs. It included beliefs and attitudes and how those might have changed over time. Gezer's going to take over, and we'll have this QR code a few times through the presentation, but you can use it to download. And Gezer's going to walk you through where you get to the curriculum, because at this point, the trial is over and we want to share with people so they can take it home with them and utilize it. So
Thanks, Doug.
maybe everybody could just introduce themselves.
Yep.
When they...
Gezer Ortega. I'm an assistant professor. I'm also in the Department of Surgery at Brigham and Women's Hospital and at the Center for Surgery and Public Health, where I do health equity research, and one of the project director on the PACTS trial. And so here you have the QR code for the curriculum. I'm going to go through a few slides, and the QR code will still be there so that you can continue to look at it. And I'll talk a little bit more about exactly how you access the curriculum. Once you click on that QR code, it will take you to our website. One of the things that we have asked people for the curriculum is that if they could just provide us with who they are. We just want to know where people are downloading PACTS from. And if they want, it's optional to provide us with some information as to like what your intent is or what you would like to learn, just so we can kind of start to learn as well. And then once you are on our website, you kind of just scroll, but you'll see here that there's instructions for the programs, which are for the program directors, and some for the residents. So even if residents come to our site, there's content that they can download that's specific for the residents. On the program director side, you see here, there's the introduction module, there's a trust module, and as everything is labeled, but you can just click on the download here and you'll be able to get these cases and get everything Every module has a PowerPoint. We designed it that way so you can just download the PowerPoint. The PowerPoint also has facilitator notes and it will guide you as to like how to discuss each slide and how to go through it. And this is an example of that. And so this is just the part of what you'll see there is the e-learning module. So Doug mentioned earlier that we use a web-based app for it, but we think it's just easier to just have the PowerPoint for scaling and dissemination. So you have an opportunity to get that content, the case exploration, which we will do one today, but there are 8 case explorations on the website. They are in Word documents, and so you can either print them. We've also have done QR codes where residents can download the QR code for each module, and then we have spaced learning questions. One of the things that we did was we designed about 20 questions, and then we'll have programs will email those questions to the residents on a cadence that worked for them. And so usually what we did at the PAC site is we would email the questions on Monday, and then Friday send them the answers. And it wasn't about, some of them would just work through them, but it was more about reading through the explanation on Friday morning so they can kind of like get another refresher of the content and the material that we wanted them to learn. And so we'll start off by going through one of these cases with you, and Ken will lead you through.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kenny Lynch. I'm a clinician, PhD educator at Brown. I'm the director of surgical education there. I had the pleasure of working with this group on building a lot of this curriculum and enrolling it at Brown. So, this is just an example of one of the modules that's up and you have access to, and they're all built the same. And I think the benefit here is the slides can really allow anybody, whoever the facilitator is at your institution, to sort of walk through this curriculum with residents, but as needed based on faculty responsibilities, really sliding folks into that role is very easy. We've done it for multiple years at Brown and it's worked really well, but every module starts off with the basic exploration objectives here, which are pretty detailed, I think, and allows folks to sort of get the gist of what they should be getting out of it. Here is just, exploring families' perspectives on illness and treatment, working on nonverbal communication skills, et cetera. And I think the nice thing too about the PACTS curriculum is like the modules sort of build off one another, and there's reinforcement across the 4 modules. So by the end of getting your residents through it, they've heard a lot of these concepts more than once. This module deals specifically too with managing implicit bias and allowing us to recognize our own potential for those biases. You can see on the right there, there's always like these little, we call them toolkits, to help remember some of the core components of the curriculum here, recognizing, being objective, practicing empathy, and using trust building strategies, which I think are just helpful for some of the visual learners out there. Trust building strategies, again, just reinforcing some of the components of the module here, practicing nonverbal communication, focus, reassurance, using clear terms. And, obviously this curriculum was built to target managing patients from various cultural backgrounds, but it's really kind of teaches you just the core components of what we want our residents to learn and how we want them to approach any interaction with patients, regardless of what their background is. And, a lot of these visual aids too here, emphasizing curiosity, empathy, and respect for patients it's going to be something that they're going to see often, just to reiterate some of the points we're trying to get across here. So that's the end. And my point here was just to show you, like, this is typically what a module looks like. It's very quick, usually 10 minutes lead-in session to go through these slides as the facilitator, answer any questions that folks have. we ended this, we were an early site, so we ended in January, early 2021. I've done this the last 3 years, and like everything else as an educator in surgery, you got to take the long game. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And so exposing our interns to this, I found it's a great way to sort of go through these 4 modules with them. And it creates a space to talk about things like, hey, interpreter services at your institution, or building trust with patients, and sort of get them up and running, especially in their intern year. And those things were typically something you didn't have space to talk about during your regularly scheduled conference sessions for residents. And so it allows you to talk a lot about your own particular individual systems, issues around some of these concepts that I find residents find valuable. And, I think Gezer alluded to it too. We have refresher courses too that are going to come to the that are going to be able to be downloaded, because if you're doing this every year with your interns, you don't want the senior residents to be like, I can't hear this. I've been through this these modules multiple times. There are refresher modules that sort of incorporate all 4 of the key components that you can sort of give them, once a year, just so they're kind of being re-exposed to this content. So my point being is this is very adaptable to your home institution, and you can sort of make the curriculum look the way you want in a way that fits your residency. But I'll hand it over now to Brittany to run through.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brittany Dacier. I'm a general surgery resident at Dartmouth, working with Dr. Ortega for 2 years at the Center for Surgery and Public Health on my research time. So I'm going to walk us through what a typical case exploration format looks like. So ideally, you would have about 60 minutes to dedicate to the case exploration. 15 minutes would be for the introduction. So each case exploration has a PowerPoint to go through. That's a refresher of the e-learning modules that would previously have been reviewed. And then after that introduction, you would spend about 30 minutes going through the case exploration. Each exploration has 2 parts, Part A and Part B, both of which take about 5 minutes to go through. And in between Part A and B, there's a check-in, which allows for small group discussion. And then there's a small group debrief after Part B, and then a large group debrief, which takes about 10 minutes, and a closing discussion for questions for the entire group, which ideally would take about 15 minutes. For these case explorations, we recommend breaking up into groups of 3. Ideally, you would have a distribution of different PGY levels within each group. And there are 3 roles: a surgical resident, patient, and coach. As you'll see, there are different scripts here with prompts. And so each person would read an individual prompt. And then there's a facilitator who would keep time and kind of guide the groups to make sure that we're staying on task. There is a feedback form for the coach who would keep track of what is accomplished within these case explorations, and then it would be returned to the facilitator at the end. Today, just for purposes of time, we've already gone through the introduction. We'll spend about 15 minutes doing a case exploration and only doing Part A. After we do Part A, we'll stay in our small groups, have a debrief, and then have a larger debrief amongst all of us, as well as some time for questions and closing discussion. So if you wouldn't mind breaking up into groups of 3, we'll hand out the prompts here. Each person will be either a resident, patient, and coach. We'll check in to see if there's any questions, and we'll give you about 5 minutes to go through Part A of the case exploration.
Well, I think we had 6 of you. By my math, that worked really well. We'll ask you to make 2 groups of 3. And you're gonna want to sort of triangulate. And we'll give you the prompts. One of you is going to be the surgeon for the one of you is going to be the patient, and one of you coach. And I'll let you figure that out. There are the three, there's one for each of those roles. Okay, so you guys can figure out what you want to do.
So one.
One paper for each, and then read through it first. And then you're gonna want to, these are your roles, so you're gonna read through it, sort of, that'll tell you what you're gonna say as a patient, or what your frame is as a provider, or if you're the coach, you're gonna jot notes and then do it.
And you don't need to memorize it, you can have your paper with you as you work through the thing.
They should have done their.
Correct, you would have had like content to read on how to do this. And also we do what Ken just did, but a more like in detail description of it. Surprisingly, sometimes the residents don't do it seriously. So you're just in the same position they are.
So the coaches is the back.
Whenever you're ready, you can start, jump into it, so just checking with your group and then you can jump into it. That's okay.
Okay, sure. Okay. Hello. The work of them.
Oh, no, I was supposed to want my daughter to get.
Okay, that's great. Together. But I think it'd be a little bit of a.
So. When you get back, I think she did. They also do this. Summer school, junior residence.
And this is like finding out that someone is hit in the belly.
Oh, it's like. Can you tell me? Yeah. Before we go. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's present. So I know that, but yes, but, you know.
I'm sure.
But yeah, it's a little, but she was on that home, you know. Yeah. So the thing is, and the fact of making up even
Yeah.
I searched, okay. So it sounds like many of you have already started to debrief, which is great. But just some things to think about in your small groups. If you want to go through the feedback form as well as discuss if the resident was able to adequately assess the reasons for Mrs. Lee's mistrust, and then what ways did the resident attempt to build trust and maybe what could have been done better.
I know a lot of, I wanted to add a couple of, first, did this, call them role plays, and the residents were like, no, we don't want to do a role play. So we changed the name to case exploration and tell you the great. The same exact concept, right? But just, we learned a lot from like just branding, like how to get buy-in from the residents that we are working through these things. The other aspect that I want to emphasize that this was what the residents told us they liked the most about the curriculum. They said the cases that are like very realistic, this is stuff that they see in the regular day to day. They felt like it helped them kind of have this discussion and this like with us in this room, so that when they get there, they're like, okay, now I'm in front of a patient, I have words, I have things that I can use to say. But more importantly, what we enjoyed the most about it was that they learned from each other. There were so many conversations where the residents were like, well, when this happens, I do this, and another resident was like, that's really good. Start doing that, because that sounds like a great thing to do. And so there was a lot of this dialogue. But also, and I think Brittany mentioned this earlier, just kind of like the separating the senior residents and the younger residents, just because when that coach role, right, it's hard for an intern to like look at the chief and say, I think you did these things pretty good. That, so it's just easier to kind of just put them, you know, the juniors together and the seniors together so that they can give that feedback to each other a little bit easier. But that coaching role was something that they really liked. And just something that they can kind of have someone like step away from it and say, oh, look at the encounter, right? And be a little bit more objective stuff to help them. But for now, but we can, one of the things we wanted to get your feedback on, what did you all think about doing this case? Anything that has come up in the discussion? It seems like most of you are in the debrief phase. So any thoughts?
We got to the point where what the daughter but I thought it was really good exercise.
Can you like that up, you know, appetizer to launch, share first experiences, the present experiences.
Any thoughts on people that are playing the position?
I played Bill. That is maybe my daughter.
I will say we have residents who deserve attendees, and because they really take on the role and make it challenging for their co-residents. And so, but I think that's part of the action. And I think we've also had residents who come back and say, like, it was also nice for them to get that perspective, because they're usually only on the other side. And from the coaches, those that were the coach, any thoughts on?
So I was looking at the checklist, going back, and I appreciate the fact that we have items that are optional in the original setting, like, and like, you know, like shaking hands and forget the phone contact. Sometimes what I do with that, especially with COVID and everything, it may not be normal shaking hands. So as I put it on, like, would you mind if I should? I think it was, I think it's also, when residents, when we come to residents, they really want a well, you know, and what are the ways from, you know, action.
Yeah, I think that's, when we did the case exploration, there, a lot of times our phrases or comments would come up. And we would try to jot down as many as we can, the challenge is that it's also unique to the settings and times and, Ken talked about interpreter services and he uses the LEP module as an opportunity to introduce the interpreter services to the residents, and to hear the resources that we have, but we know that's going to be unique to that institution, like to that hospital. One of the things that when we did it at one of our programs, I remember there was the same case, the trust case, and one of the residents, he was like, when I'm in a situation and I have a patient who I can tell that this is, we're not connecting and we're trying to build a rapport, he said, I just stop and I just sit and ask the patient and I tell them, or I ask them, what are the 3 most concerning things happening in your life? Like, forget all this, like, let's just talk about what's going on in your life. And he's like, that's such a disarming question to the patient. It's like, whoa, but then they start like open up and share with them. And then once they build that rapport, then it's like, okay, well, let's work together to get these other things done, right? And the residents in the room were like, wow, I'm gonna use that, right? Next time I'm in a situation. And so I think that that's part of the manager, so for the case exploration, that those type of phrases and comments come up in that dialogue when you're talking about these cases, right? But they allow for them to kind of come up. But we do have some phrases on that. Like some common things, but I think that part of it is just really like the residents' interaction with each other, right? And like, oh, I've used this, or I've used that, or faculty used that. And we had another scenario where, another case where the attending has asked the resident to discharge the patient, but the patient doesn't want to go. And like, that's never happened, right? So, right, but then the resident's like, well, I gotta get this patient discharged because I don't want to I don't want to be in trouble by attending. But it was nice to have attendings in the room there, like, look, if this happens, just talk to us and what happened, right? Like, this is not like we're here to figure this out, and like you could just feel like the decompression, right? Just having those faculty in there, like, no, like we're here to work with you and figure this out, right? Because residents have to like angst about what I gotta do, what the task is. Similar to the informed consent module, right? Like, I gotta come back with a signed document, or else it's not, that's the way. But it's working through those cases.
Of the residents in our currently practicing the board. And it just seems so natural that when you're practicing for the oral boards, like it's not enough to read the textbook, but you have to practice out loud, like verbally. And in the same situation here, where it's like, you could easily read through like what you had on the coaching sheet, the build books, whatever, but it's so different actually speaking that. And I think that it would really, I think that it would appeal to the surgical residents who are thinking about that. The oral board, where that was teaching that where just reading and thinking about like what the actual looks like in real life. And other types of kind of simulation sessions that I've done for different forms of education, it all is in practice, so that is like second nature to you when you're actually doing it instead of like having to think in that moment of having, how many protocols about. So I think it's certainly but I don't agree.
And I think a lot of the content also allows you to kind of think about these situations before they occur.
Yeah.
Right. So that you have the words already. Okay. And I've seen this before, right? And you think you're approaching with a little bit more confidence. One of the things before I handed back to Brittany was the LEP module. That's the only one where we break up into like 4 because we have someone play the medical interpreter. And I can tell you 9.9 times out of 10, we always have a scenario where the resident playing the interpreter, if someone's saying something, it's like way more than they can interpret. And this is English to English to English, right? We're not even using other languages. And then it's resident, it's like, that's not what they just said. I just heard what they just said. And you're like, and they're like, I know, but I can't keep up, right? It just had that experience of like, even working through an English to English translation or interpretation is already challenging, let alone one language. And I think that the residents always walk away with like, wow, like a very deep appreciation for the role that interpreters have on the team. And like, just maybe I shouldn't say a whole essay to the interpreter before he communicates this to the next person. And so it's like, I think those are some of the things that come out of these cases that we work through.
What is daily reading?
Limited English proficiency.
And I would just say, like, you can have some fun with, depending on, you know, how many folks are in the room today. Like I said, I've been doing this with our interns over the last 3 years, and we have 13 interns on our class at Brown. And so I've gone both ways to separate them out into groups of 3 to do this, and then kind of come back to the larger session. And then this year, we've been doing it where I just bring, like, for each module, I get 3 different residents to come to the front of the room and act out, do the scenario in front of everybody else who's acting as like the coach and has some background, and we sort of have a discussion there. So you can really just sort of make it work. Like I said, it is very adaptable, based on like how many residents you have or how you deliver the curriculum.
Yeah, when we originally did it for the trial, we did 2 phases so that if residents could rotate and play different roles. And we did 90-minute sessions. Some of the feedback we got was like, can we get it down to 60 minutes? And so that's why we designed it in a way where it's now 60 minutes with 1 case. But now you just have more cases, and you can just choose which case you would like to do. But that way, you could also mix it up so it's a different scenario.
What is the key that's, like, do you do this all in the beginning, or do you do it like on the second quarter?
Yeah, I mean, I've just structured it quarterly because it allows you to, like I said, they do build off one another. Like you just reinforce some of the concepts that you talked about in the previous module. So I find that just doing it quarterly really works out well for the academic administrative perspective.
Yeah, well, you've been doing the same for, or it sounds like you're refreshers, but are you doing the same for every year, just for interns?
Just for the intern, so the intern, and because I was involved, I have the refresher module too to go with the seniors. But yeah, I think it's like, as I said, there's 2 modules, there's 2 scenarios for each module, so you can just rotate them each year. So like this year's intern, we're doing like 4 sets of the case scenarios that are different from what last year's intern did. So it just kind of allows you to kind of keep the content variable and so everybody's not getting exactly the same thing at the same time.
Yeah, and the intent was that you give residents time to do the pre-reading. And so you would say, hey, we're gonna do this in next, next time, give them the content to pre-read, you would do the case exploration, and then we could do the space learning questions afterwards. So you would email them some questions about that specific topic, and they could just do that on their own. Like, they're multiple choice questions that they could do. It's kind of, again, be another another teaching moment, another opportunity.
Something that's been a big challenge for us as we've tried to incorporate more like case-based discussions around health equity, is a lack of people a lack of particularly faculty in our department who feel they have the content expertise and the skill expertise to facilitate discussions on this topic. Do you guys have suggestions for either like nationally available resources through APDS or whatever, or institutional resources that might help us like cultivate this expertise for the long term kind of moving forward? Because we've really like that's ended up being a lot like resident facilitated out of necessity, but that's I think
Yeah, that's definitely something that we're trying to work through, because we have had requests from programs and we're limited. I think this is one of the opportunities that came, like, okay, let's go to APDS and do something where we can teach others on how to do this curriculum. We are always happy to, if there's a faculty member who wants to meet with us, we can find a time to meet with them and work through the curriculum. Obviously, that's not the easiest thing to scale. And so that's one of the challenges is exactly that. But I think that for the most part, when we launched this, we gave the program directors at the 8 sites the material. We did do just kind of like, hey, this is how you would do it at your site. But the program directors just had the content, and they kind of got certain faculty to come with them and to be part of the curriculum at their site. But there wasn't a lot of like, I think the curriculum is pretty. We even put in there, like, and you'll see when you download the slides, like potential questions that we've gotten, how we've answered them, right? So like, even if you get a tough question, like, here's a response that you can get that will work. So we try to do our best, but obviously there's going to be scenarios and situations that are challenging that we may not have thought of yet. But I think that as we continue to like evolve and pushing forward,
it's a great question. I would say mostly the faculty's role is to facilitate the discussion, it doesn't have to share that. I will also say that we've heard from training quite frequently that our faculty need this as well, which is true. And actually, I think it's one of the great things about surgery education is sometimes the learning is from maybe lower in the hierarchy to higher. And we, not just with this, but I think are a few other examples of things that are training really actually know better than our faculty, and it starts to percolate. But we would recruit faculty who we think were interested, invested, even if they didn't have that expertise, and they may not even be, for instance, specialty, but within the department. It doesn't really have, it doesn't matter if we we have some medical condition, but it's not about that. So you can pull in lots of people, or even not surgeons. You can just get a few people and bring in some other faculty so they can experience it and they get a little more comfortable.
Maybe identifying other faculty, who have the interest but don't feel comfortable like taking on that role and just having them be part of the curriculum and be like. Be more like,
And to add to Doug's point, at most of our sites, we had a resident champion, so we had a PACTS resident champion, and they would lead the discussions at certain sites. So even at Brigham, Doug would do the introduction, and then our resident champion would come in, lead the, kind of guide the case exploration, and and I think it's also made it a little bit more easier for the residents, like their colleague that's here and want to support, and it works well. So I agree with Doug. It doesn't always have to be. There's a way to kind of, obviously, you want that your PD, right, or your leadership to have to be there, because I think it definitely helps with the buy-in. But having the residents want to. We have another lecture here, so somebody else gonna want. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us though if you have any questions.
Yeah. So
I know we have to turn over.
my email or something and you have questions.
that'd be great, thank you. I didn't even try, I'm honest.
You know.
It brought up shower door
I
handle.
put one on